Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me welcome you all to the virtual event entitled International Parliamentarians in the Question of Palestine, organized by the UN Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. I am Sheikh Nyang, permanent representative of Senegal to the United Nations here in New York. Even if I'm calling now, I'm talking to you now from Dakar, Senegal, and I'm also the chair of the committee. I will be moderating today's virtual event, a panel discussion of 3 parliamentarians from Africa, Europe, North America, and with the committee and the public. But before I go the capacity, our deepest condolences on the untimely passing of His Excellency Mr. CEIRPP, the esteemed and revered Palestinian diplomat and political figure. Our committee was honored in the past to have him participate in activities. So we are mourning this with the Palestinian people, the Palestinian Authority, and to you, my dear friend Riyadh, and with your mission, your entire mission. And I would like for that also to ask you to join me in observing 1 minute of silence in memory of the late CEIRPP. I thank you. Now let's give you the context of our discussions. As you know, we are now living in very unprecedented times where Israel, the occupying power, it has been continuing its actions of de facto annexation of more areas in the occupied Palestinian territory, amidst, as I said, a situation exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And our committee in this context has shifted its advocacy work into the virtual place. In the past few months, we have been holding events with Palestinian and Israeli experts, with politicians, activists, civil society representatives, to continue informing about the situation on the ground and to seek the rallying support and solidarity for the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination and independence. Today, we are convening for a virtual event on the work of parliamentarians throughout the world who support the attainment of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and promote a just resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in peace and security. Our guests will highlight how efforts within national constituencies and international levels. They will also talk about impediments to moving forward, and we will also discuss how to bypass or overcome those hurdles. For this discussion, it is my pleasure to welcome Mrs. María Arena, member of the European Parliament, Mr. Mandla Mandela, member of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, and Mrs. Betty McCollum, member of the United States House of Representatives. Before giving the floor to our panelists, let me say a few words about our committee, established by the UNGA in 1975, to pursue the following main goals, the 3 main goals. The first one is promoting a just and peaceful settlement to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and end to Israeli occupation. The second goal is realizing the two-state solution with the goal of having Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders. And the third goal is supporting the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including self-determination, sovereignty, and right. The committee implements its mandate by raising awareness on the question of Palestine through a range of activities, among them events and conferences at UN headquarters in New York and abroad, by also organizing a capacity building program for the state of Palestine, and also by having that annual observance of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people on the 29th of November. Throughout its existence, our committee has counted parliamentarians as our allies. And with today's event, we are continuing this partnership and this tradition. National, regional, and regional parliaments, as well as interparliamentary organizations, have played important roles in efforts to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, including by shaping public opinion, by formulating policy guidelines, and by upholding international legitimacy in support of a comprehensive, just, and lasting settlement of the question of Palestine. Parliamentarians have helped to raise awareness on the situation in the OPT, including East Jerusalem, working to incorporate international obligations embedded in the relevant UN resolutions, the Arab Peace Initiative, and bilateral agreements, international legislation. They have promoted diplomatic recognition by their respective countries of the state of Palestine, and also the implementation of international law via their oversight role over the executive branch in their countries, as well as turning civil society advocacy into concrete policies. In addition, parliamentarians have also voted to incorporate into national and supranational budgets much needed aid for the Palestinian people. And recently in the US, letters from progressive members of the US Parliament have sensitized on the jure and de facto Israeli annexation of Palestinian lands, including East Jerusalem, as well as Israel's other continued violations of international law, with some calling on Congress to reconsider the yearly US military aid package to Israel. More importantly, in August 2020, the draft bill entitled Israeli Annexation Non-Recognition Act was introduced to the US House of Representatives to prohibit the United States from formally recognizing or providing aid to any area of the occupied West Bank annexed by Israel. In the European Union, members of the European Parliament and national parliaments continue to call on the EU, its member states, and international community to pressure Israel to end the occupation and its settlement policy, to lift the blockade of Gaza, to commit to a revitalized roadmap for peace based on international law and relevant UN resolutions, and also to recognize an independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state. They provide critical support and pressure on the EU and its member states to implement UN Security Council resolutions, such as Resolution 2334 of 2016, a resolution that calls upon all member states, UN member states, to differentiate in dealing with Israel between Israeli territory and the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. Parliamentarians in South Africa are requested to provide guidance to Palestinian civil society groups as they advocate at the UN Human Rights Council for the revival of the UN Center Against Apartheid to address the situation in the OPT. From the side of our committee, we count on the ongoing support from South Africa, our fellow committee member, in reaching out into the region and continent to shore up support for the Palestinian people and the solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the basis of international law, United Nations resolutions, and AU resolutions. And these are just a few examples of the work of parliamentarians to advocate for the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. I am looking forward to learning how we, as the UN representatives in the Palestinian Rights Committee, how we can deepen our partnership, how we can support your work as parliamentarians across the world, and also I would like to know what you would want us to do here at the UN headquarters. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is now my honor to ask my colleague and friend, Minister Riyad Mansour, permanent observer of the State of Palestine to the UN in New York, to whom I renew my condolences and my sympathy. So I invite him to deliver his remarks. Before, dear brother, Minister Mansour, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, my brother, my good friend, Ambassador Sheikh Niang, for convening this meeting and for expressing on behalf of this committee the condolences of the members of the committee to the Palestinian people and their leadership, and to the family of my dear brother, Dr. CEIRPP, who is very familiar with the work of this committee, and the committee knows him well, and he has participated more than one occasion in being a guest, which he addressed that this committee many times, whether in New York or in other places outside. Allow me also to express our gratitude to the committee, to you, Mr. Chairman, the Bureau, to the Division Palestinian Rights at the United Nations under the leadership of Ilya Tamburi, and for all those who are with us today. Top of the list, the three distinguished guests who are the panelists, Ms. Arena, Ms. McCollum, and Mr. Mandela, for sharing with us their thoughts and their ideas as it relates to the role of parliamentarians on the question of Palestine and cause. We respect immensely parliamentarians, and our committee over the years played a very active role. Parliamentarians, I remember in more than one occasion in which we had special conferences of parliamentarians to address the question of Palestine. And one of these conferences was in Malta. Another one was in Cyprus. And I know that delegations of the committee in all the activities and the conferences that were organized in all corners of the globe, the delegation of the committee under your leadership, Mr. Chairman, the participation of our colleagues from the committee, including myself, we always pay special attention to parliamentarians. I remember, not too long ago, when we went to Berlin and we met with many components of the German parliament. I remember when we went to Brussels and met in the European Parliament with so many components of the different political parties and the countries that they represented in the European Parliament. And also I remember in our visits in Africa, in Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia, and in fact, the last visit at the beginning of this year before the pandemic hit all of us, the committee delegation met not only with representatives of the Indian government, but also members of the Indian Parliament. So all these are very important parcels of the work of the committee, which we, the Palestinian people and their leadership, are extremely grateful for such an engagement. We know that many parliaments have decided, including the parliament in the UK, for their government to recognize the state of Palestine as part and parcel of investment in having the two-state solution to become a reality on the ground. But we also know that sometimes the executive branch of governments listen to recommendations and resolutions of Parliament, and sometimes they take note of it and they don't necessarily act on it. It's our duty to continue engaging all branches of governments in all countries so that we can open meaningful doors for a political process that would lead to reaching peace between us and our neighbors, including Israel, on the basis of the global consensus of having two states living in peace and security on the basis of the 1967 borders, which the eastern part, which is occupied of East Jerusalem, would be the capital of our state, and to find a just solution to the refugees. I remember also that we engaged you and I, Mr. Chairman, with the Canadian parliamentarians. And we were delighted to know and to meet with members of the 19 MPs of the Canadian Parliament that went and visited the occupied Palestinian territory. And we look forward to engagement with our colleagues in the US Congress. I remember in the event that the committee organized in Cyprus, a member of the US Congress, like our colleague, Honorable Ms. McCollum, who is participating with us. I remember that the congressman from Cleveland, Ohio, Pisinich, participated with us in that meeting in Cyprus about some 10 years ago or maybe longer, in sharing with us his thoughts and maybe thoughts of other colleagues of his in the US Congress as it relates to peace and finding a solution to this conflict. I believe that with the things that are happening in Washington, D.C. lately, we sincerely hope that the committee could be given the opportunity to engage with members of the U.S. Congress to try really to contribute in a collective way to finding a just solution to this conflict that lasted for way too long. And the people in our region, including the people of Palestine, do deserve to live in peace after we see an end this Israeli occupation to our land and to have the two-state solution. From our side, as Palestinians, we will continue to engage with you. As you have mentioned that the late Dr. Saeb Erekat participated more than one occasion in activities of and Dr. Hanan Ashrawi and many other parliamentarians, and even my brother Bilal Qasim, who is with us from the Palestine National Council from Amman. Myself, I am also a member of the Central Council and the Palestine National Council of the Palestine Liberation Organization. We will not hesitate to continue to cooperate with you at the level of parliamentarians as we cooperate with you at the level of the Palestinian leadership. We wish this meeting all the success, and we are again grateful for your organizing it at this time, time of pandemic. We cannot be together in person, great if it was possible, but still to meet through a Zoom methods. This is the new normal of today. It's better than not to meet at all. After all, I think that through discussions reasonable women and men having serious discussion on the basis of international law, on the basis of civility, and on the basis genuine commitment, peace and human rights and humanity, I am sure that we can contribute, even in a modest way, moving the process. Thank you again, my brother Chairman, and I wish you a speedy recovery, and I can't wait to see you back. Thank you again very much.
Unmute the microphone, Chairman.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Minister Mansour, I thank you very sincerely for your very enlightening remarks. And on behalf of the committee, I can assure you your mission, the Palestinian Authority, of our continued support to continue the fight in order to achieve the exercise by the Palestinian people of its inalienable rights. Now, before we start with our great panel, let me remind everyone that this event is being streamed live via UN Web TV, Twitter, and UN YouTube. It is also being recorded, and it will be available on the committee website, Facebook, and YouTube channels for viewing at your convenience. I would like also to give a warm welcome to the audience following us via different platforms. Everyone is also encouraged to tweet the hashtag Rights for Palestine. Following the initial remarks by our panelists, I will open the virtual floor for discussion. We will also be able to take some questions which member states can pose via the chat box function in WebEx, and the public can pose questions via the Facebook channel by sending an email to dpr-meeting@un.org or via WhatsApp at +1 646 421 0579 +1 646 421 0579. I now have the pleasure to give the floor in a minute to Mrs. María Arena, parliamentarian from Belgium, who has been serving as member of the European Parliament, MEP, since 2014. She is a member of the Socialist Party, part of the Party of European Socialists. During her first term, she served on the Committee on International Trade, INTA, the Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality, the delegation to the ACP-EU Joint Parliamentarian Assembly, and the delegation to the Parliamentarian Assembly of the Union for the Mediterranean. In March 2018, Mrs. Arena visited the OPT together with other MEPs. Since 2019, she has been a member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs and the chairwoman of its subcommittee on human rights. So it is my distinct honor to give now the floor to Mrs. Arena. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. And hope that everything is okay for you, even if I know that you are in the hospital. And so take care. So thank you for organizing this meeting. And it's very an honor for me to be here today with you, with the panel on the question of Palestine. I wish to give you an outline of the approach and priorities of the European Parliament, but also of the subcommittee, Droit Committee. It is dealing with human rights all over the world, but also as my previous term here at the European Parliament, because I was, as you said, in the International Trade Committee, and I have had in charge this Israel-Palestine trade agreement. So it was really interesting to see exactly how it was possible to deal with this issue. But making human rights a reality for Palestinians is our collective challenge. We all know that we still have a long way to go, even after more than 50 years of Israeli occupation. We all know as well that there is no peace without human rights. In this context, I would like to pay tribute to fervent engagement and determination of Palestinian chief negotiator CEIRPP for peace process over the past decades. I will start our hope for the future. And for the future, I look forward to seeing national leadership bodies on both sides with skills, experience, energy, good faith, patience, and network to sit together and make the region a better place for rights and freedom. We know that it is to deal with Palestinian and Israeli people, but we also know that the change in the US policy for the future can help a lot in these conflicts. But we also have to evaluate and to understand what is the meaning of the Abraham Agreement between Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan with Israel that have a kind of normalization of the relations with Israel. And we will discuss about that at the European Parliament at the next plenary to understand a little bit more what will be the issue in these agreements. This also means that we should continue supporting and enhancing our partnership with civil society representatives, deploying tremendous efforts to make human rights a reality for all. This means as well empowering young leaders from as many communities as possible and see communities debating and exchanges ideas, and also, and I must say that also respectfully disagreeing on some issues. For the Subcommittee of Human Rights, the issue of Palestine is a priority. And we will focus on the human rights situation in Palestine at its forthcoming meeting of the 16th of November, in the presence of the UN Special Rapporteur, Michael Links, and prominent civil society organizations such as B'Tselem or the Cairo Institute. In my capacity as chair of this subcommittee, I also have the duty to closely follow individual cases brought to our attention by NGOs, but also by victims' families, to be addressed through public statements or silent diplomacy, making best use of the EU channel. This is not easy at all for the moment, as the protection of and the promotion of rights of Palestinians is a long-standing issue with limited room of maneuver. As you must have experience in your respective capacity and body, it is of utmost importance to continue putting the respect of the rights of the Palestinians on the agenda. Because in the region, a lot of conflicts are there, for example, the Syrian one, and sometimes people tend to forget not to put the priority on the Palestinian issue. Particular emphasis is placed on issues made important by the context, the actual context. And I can list the different issues, but you know very well them. So it's the status of Jerusalem, the assistance to refugees, and the support of UNRWA. You know that UNRWA is, for the moment, in a very, very weak situation. We decided at the European Parliament budget to give them more support, but they need to have more support coming from all the international community. There is also the administrative detention without charges and the situation of the many children detainees, or also the right to a fair trial in the line of international standards. And I can continue on the different issues, just like the Gaza blockage, for example, and the situation in Gaza during this pandemic situation that is worsening the situation of the population of Gaza. Lack of respect for human rights disregard for international law, and unilateral negotiation clearly undermine multilateralism and the prospect for a lasting peace in this region. Only sufficient guarantees in place to create space for rights and freedom will improve living conditions for everyone in the region. And this is what we have to achieve together on this. I will go now through some specific aspects linked to my former position. The first one was the European Union differentiation policy. On the 12th of November 2015, the European Commission published the interpretative notice on indication origin of goods from the territories occupied by Israel since June 1967. These guidelines are not about prohibition of settlements products. Unfortunately, this is my personal point of view, but about labeling properly Israeli products in line with the EU legislation on consumer protections, and to respect the tariff agreements only for Israeli products made in Israel and not in the illegally occupied territories. All European member states didn't welcome this publication of these guidelines, and some still refuse to implement it, putting them not respecting international law, but also European law. As European Parliament in the past term, I was responsible in the International Trade Committee of the trade relationship with Israel and Palestine. I have followed the implementation of these guidelines, and which remains challenging for many reasons, in particular because it is in some cases difficult for custom authorities to control the origin of the products, but also sometimes because there is no political will to do so. As you probably know, the EU and Israel agreed to sign a technical arrangement. This arrangement was a list of locations identified by zip codes in order to identify settlements which can't benefit from the preferential treatment. Israel agreed then to indicate the place of production and its corresponding postal code, even if for a large range of products, the indication was made in Tel Aviv, when we know perfectly well that it was not the case. For example, when it comes to the cosmetic Dead Sea products. But in 2013, Israel changed the postal code system for 5-digit to 7-digit system. And European member state custom authorities recognized the difficulty to control the products with the new postal code system. The EU delegation in Israel estimates that trade with Israel settlements represents only 1% of the total waste trade between EU and Israel. So they say that it's not really important. But this represents 300 million out of a total trade value of 30 billion. In contrast, according to the EU-Palestinian export to the EU have had an average value of 15 million a year, the past 5 years due largely to the difficulty caused by the occupation. And based on these figures, the EU imports 15 times more from the settlement than from the Palestinian, even with the declared 1% from Israel's side. So it is something, it is a matter, it is really a matter. So for the differentiation policy, we need more transparency from Israel, more cooperation from member states, and a real political will to respect European law on consumer protection and preferential tariffs. The second point is the association agreement between EU and Israel. The Article 2 of the association agreement between EU and Israel states that relations between the parties shall be based on respect for human rights and democratic principles, and it is linked to the peace process improvement, respecting international law, and more specifically the 23 34 UN resolution. I personally consider that this clause has not been respected, and I have called for the suspension of this agreement. But this has to be decided unanimously by the 27 member states. And honestly, there is no political will, neither in the Council nor in the Commission, to do so. Last but not least, how to go forward on this? First, I think that it's really tremendously important to have the recognition of the state of Palestine from the EU level. This is the first step. It is not possible just to recognize Israel and not to have this recognition of the state of Palestine. The second thing is the implementation of the UN 2234 resolution is part of international law. The differentiation policy is an international obligation under this resolution, but we can't implement it alone. Therefore, the UN plays a key role in protecting respect of international law and promoting multilateralism action. The publication of the UN database of businesses engaged in settlement is much appreciated. That database should encourage states and European ones to take their responsibilities regarding the respect of international law and adopt due diligence legislation. The UN database and its annual updates are key to identify and ensure that businesses are not involving in the human rights violation and grave breaches of international law in the occupied territories. As European Parliamentary MEP, and with the support of the civil society, we are currently examining the role of European cooperation listed in this UN database, and as well as other companies listed, they have not received funds from the European agency. So it is really important for us to have this database being updated every year and to follow this company not to receive money from the European side. Last but not least, I think that we don't have enough partnership with your committee, the UN Committee on Palestine. And I hope that we will have more work between our Human Rights Committee and your committee to continue to work for Palestinian human rights. Thank you very much for all what you have done. Thank you.
MP Arena, thank you very much for your introduction. And I'm glad that we have a very perfect commonality of views. And I feel so grateful for all the activities you are leading there and your engagement, your commitment. I listened to what you have been doing with the empowerment of women and the most vulnerable in Palestine, the human rights, your relations with the civil society organizations, and also what you have been also campaigning about UNRWA. So it looks like you are duplicating what we are doing here at the committee. So we are really happy to see you do that, and I really want to congratulate you so warmly and say that we count on you. We count on you because our European partners are very important partners in this struggle. And we have been to the EU. We've been to Belgium. Maybe we need to do more. And even this year, if there was not any pandemic, we would have maybe planned to go back again. But we've heard you. We've been there, but we will make sure that we return. And I'm sure we'll be pleased also to meet you when we get there. But I'm really impressed by what you have done so far. And one just word I can say to you: keep it up. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Mandla Mandela. And in giving the floor to Mr. Mandela, I have really a very moving memories about Mandela himself. When we say Mandela, we think of a man. He's been a great man. He has done a lot for Palestine, campaigning for Palestine in his own way. And also I have some personal, let's say, The reason why I feel moved, because I was ambassador to your country. I was ambassador to South Africa, and I still hold very good memories. So, Mr. Mandla Mandela is the grandson of former President Nelson Mandela, and he is the chief of the Mzezo Traditional Council. He has been a member of Parliament for the African National Congress since 2009. In and outside Parliament, he has also been supporting the Palestinian people, and we are very grateful for that, and defending their rights, highlighting the parallels between the current Israeli system and the treatment of the Palestinian people under its occupation with what happened with apartheid in South Africa. So without going further, I will stop here and give the floor to Mr. Mandla Mandela. You have the floor, sir.
His Excellency Sheikh Niang, the chair of the committee, and the ambassador of Senegal, our honorable guests, fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me first and foremost take this opportunity to wish Sheikh Niang a speedy recovery as he hosts this meeting from hospital. It gives me a great pleasure to participate in this August forum organized by the UN Committee for Palestinian Rights. We meet at a precarious moment in the history of the struggle for Palestine, with a number of serious challenges confronting us and a world in crisis, perhaps at a scale we have not witnessed before. However, we are guided by the legacy and wisdom of His Excellency President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, who always reminded us and encouraged us not to be victims of history, but rather to be architects of our own destiny. I bring you greetings and warm felicitations from the National Assembly of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, the Royal House of Mandela, and the people of South Africa on this important occasion that we are deliberating on a subject so close to our heart. On that note, allow me, Honorable Chairperson, to pause briefly to pass our sincere condolences on the passing of Dr. Saeb Erekat. Our thoughts in this time of bereavement are with his family, the leadership of the State of Palestine, and the courageous people of Palestine as we celebrate the passing of a colossal giant of the Palestinian struggle. He dedicated his life in pursuit of the dream of a free Palestine, and we will honor his life by carrying on this just struggle. He was not only a great friend of South Africa and our struggle for liberation and freedom. His voice echoed in all corridors of power, fiercely opposing the apartheid state, and he was a true champion of the global campaign for the isolation of the brutal regime. This virtual meeting, under the theme of International Parliamentarians and the Question of Palestine, organized by the UN Committee for Palestinian Rights, comes at an opportune moment as we once again, in a post-Trump world, assert the centrality of UN in bringing about a just world order and the universal rights as envisioned in its founding charter. Over the past 4 years, the policy of unilateralism, championed by the USA, has wreaked havoc. Firstly, a spurious attempt in violation of countless UN resolutions on the final status of Jerusalem. The unilateral declaration by the USA of Jerusalem as a capital of apartheid Israel sent shockwaves through all the parliaments of the world as its ramifications were far-reaching. Needless to say, all condemned it, and we applaud the good work that you as a committee have done to eventually have it declared illegal by an emergency session of the United Nations. Secondly, there was the cruel cutting off funding from the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. This came days after it cut $200 million from the budget of US aid, impacting its work in supporting thousands of refugees in Gaza. UNRWA budget cuts had devastating impacts for 5 million people who rely on its schools, healthcare, and social services. We salute UNRWA as it not only serves Palestinians in the occupied territories, but also in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. We join parliamentarians, activists, unions, NGOs, and other structures all over the world in condemning this unilateral action at a time when the USA was increasing the defense budget to apartheid Israel. The third challenge came in the guise of the deal of the century, which I correctly called the hoax of the century. This existential threat to the viability of a contiguous Palestinian state was driven by the motive to wipe historic Palestine from the map through annexation of the occupied West Bank. This too was roundly condemned by parliaments of the world, and Palestinian leaders spoke out and declared that such a deal was a non-deal and that Palestine was not for sale. We too expressed our indignation at this ill-conceived plot. The fourth challenge, and I can assure you all, it was the most painful for us to accept here in South Africa. Throughout our struggle against the brutal apartheid regime, the poor frontline states of Southern Africa stood united by our side and supported our struggle at peril of their own people. They stood by us, unswerved by threats, bombings, extrajudicial killings, and the general mayhem caused by the brutal apartheid regime of South Africa, as it acted with impunity to quell our struggle and deal it a death blow. However, our neighboring countries were unshaken and remained firm in their resolve. Today, the Palestinian people and their just struggle has been betrayed by those who have elected to do the bidding of the USA and ill-informed have chosen to normalize relations with apartheid Israel. I have appealed on numerous occasions and for numerous platforms those who have chosen normalization to rescind such decisions and return to the principled position of isolating apartheid Israel until it meets the conditions conducive for reaching a fair and just settlement. President Mandela rejected every attempt at capitulation and insisted that only free men can negotiate. We therefore advocate for the release of all political prisoners, the right of return of all refugees in the Palestinian diaspora, stopping all illegal settlements on Palestinian land, and return of land to its rightful owners. I repeat my call to Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Sudan, who supported our struggle in South Africa by boycotting the apartheid regime, to once again take this principled stand. Parliamentarians of the world have an important role to play as we chart the way forward. Through initiating debates, adopting motions, and engaging each other in global forums, we can raise awareness, formulate strategies, and lobby for the cause. We also have an important role to play to providing oversight and ensure that policy positions are translated into concrete initiatives, programs, and projects by our respective governments in support of the Palestinian struggle. We can also inform the formation of regional blocs in support for the cause. If there is anything that we can learn from President Mandela that was so apt when he said it and remains as relevant as ever, it is this, I quote, "The greatest moral issue of our time is the struggle of the Palestinian people," close quote. I call on my fellow parliamentarians all over the world to use your positions of privilege to advance this struggle so that one day we may too celebrate justice, freedom, and peace in a free Palestine. I thank you, Your Excellencies.
Honorable Mandela, I thank you so very much for your statement and for the kind words you have had for the committee. I would like to say here that South Africa is a very active member of our committee, and we appreciate South Africa's outstanding and very positive contribution to our work. We are grateful for its principled position and statements and its pragmatic in dealing with this problem. As we all know, we tend to always equate or even find some kind of resemblance between apartheid South Africa and what is Palestine now. And we are lucky, we are happy that you have been able to defeat injustice, historic injustice in South Africa, due to your own resolve, also due to the international support you received from all over the world. And I think we need your resolve, we need your experience to inspire us and make sure that also the fight for the liberation of Palestine can be enriched by that energy, by the resolve, and by that commitment. So once again, I'm very happy to have heard you. Thank you very, very much. And we appreciate your contribution. And we count on you also to, I know that you are doing it, but we count on you to speak to your colleagues in South Africa, to speak to your colleagues within your sub-region, in the SADC region, and even beyond in Africa, because we need the support of the whole African continent to push in order to find a lasting solution to this problem. Thank you once again. Thank you for being available. So now I'm going to give the floor to the third speaker, Mrs. Betty McCollum, Honorable Betty McCollum, member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Minnesota since 2001, and the second woman in Congress from Minnesota. She has introduced legislation to promote human rights for children by ending abusive Israeli military detention practices. And in August of this year, she introduced the Israeli Annexation Non-Recognition Act, which is a bill to prohibit the US from formally recognizing or providing US aid to any area of the occupied West Bank annexed by the government of Israel. So, Honorable McCollum, I have the pleasure and the honor to give you the floor.
Thank you, and good morning. And I'm pleased to join you all from St. Paul, Minnesota, Ambassador Nang. I'm grateful for the invitation to share my efforts to promote the rights of the Palestinian people with the committee. And I wish for you continued good health. I know you're taking good care of yourself today. Ambassador Mansour, please accept my warmest greetings and my condolences on the loss of a personal friend for you and a great leader for the Palestinian people. It's an honor to have heard and to be able to join my parliamentary colleagues, the Honorable Arena and the Honorable Mandela. As a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, I am one vote, I am one voice representing a constituency of 700,000 people. I'm also one of a small group of members of Congress who vocally support Palestinian rights. Palestinians deserve peace, security, human rights, and the right to self-determination. They also deserve a future filled with hope, opportunity, and prosperity. The people of Israel also deserve peace and security. And as you know, the United States government subsidized Israel's security with billions of dollars in military assistance, a policy strongly supported by Congress. Until recently, my government also provided the Palestinian people with economic and humanitarian assistance intended to foster the conditions for a just and finally negotiated peace. The goal has been a two-state solution with an independent Palestinian state. Advancing peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians was the U.S. policy. Under President Trump, that policy no longer exists. The Trump administration expelled Palestinian diplomats from Washington and cut off economic assistance for the Palestinian people. My government has not only abandoned the Palestinian people, but has inflicted hardship upon them. And now comes the efforts to permanently annex the Palestinian lands. My nation's president has broken trust and abandoned shared international values on issues where most universal consensus exists: human rights, climate change, and advancing a just Middle East peace. These actions have caused significant damage to long-standing relationships and to my country's standing in the world. Yet, in politics, change is possible. The reality that a new U.S. President, Joe Biden, will take office in January offers hope. That the U.S. once again will work with the world community and not against it. Healing the damage and betrayal inflicted on the Palestinian people by the President Trump will be difficult. If it is possible, it will require new U.S. administration to prioritize respectful and substantial diplomatic re-engagement with the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian civil society. Actions in time will determine whether this trust can be restored. When the Biden administration does engage, the Palestinian people deserve to have questions answered. After decades of military occupation, human rights violations, settlement expanses, home demolitions, and a de facto apartheid, is the Israeli government interested in a just peace? Another question I have is, do the joint actions of the Trump administration and the Israeli government, along with the failure of the international community to protect Palestinian rights, extinguish the prospect of Palestinian self-determination? Palestinians and Israelis, the world community, including the United States, need to answer these questions. These are questions that reflect the reality, a reality that must be confronted by all those who believe in peace, justice, equality, and security for the Palestinian people and the people of Israel. My efforts to promote Palestinian rights started when a 2013 UNICEF report was brought to my attention. It was entitled "Children in Israeli Military Detention." The report stated, and I quote, "Ill treatment of Palestinian children in the Israeli military detention system appears to be widespread and systematic and institutionalized. I trust UNICEF." And their report opened my eyes. The Israeli systematic abuse and torture has been going on for years. Thousands of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, aged between 12 and 17, have been taken from their homes in the middle of the night by Israeli soldiers. They are interrogated without parents or lawyers present, emotionally and psychologically and physically abused, and then held for weeks, months in pretrial detention, often unlawfully transferred to prisons and detention centers inside Israel. Israel military courts are not independent or impartial. Children face military judges that are active duty or reserve duty officers in the Israeli military. In this context, regardless of guilt or innocence, Palestinian children overwhelmingly plead guilty because it is the fastest way to get out of the system. International law and international juvenile justice standards demand that attention be only used as a measure of last resort. The best interest of children must be the primary consideration of all actions involving a person under the age of 18. When it's normal for youth to be targeted for arrest, ill-treated, denied access to counsel during interrogations, and held in pretrial custody detention, there is no justice, and the system is not just. Israel's system of military child detention is brutal, it's cruel, and it's unnecessary. It is a weapon of military occupation that imposes collective trauma and control over the Palestinian families. It is a blatant violation of international humanitarian law, and it has nothing to do with Israeli security. In 2017, and most recently in 2019, I introduced legislation in the Congress entitled Promoting Human Rights for Palestinian Children Living Under Israeli Military Occupation. This legislation places conditions on U.S. security assistance to any country, including Israel, and prohibits U.S. tax dollars from being used to support and enable military detention of Palestinian children. This is the first bill ever introduced in Congress to promote or protect Palestinian rights, and it is likely that it will not pass in the Congress. But the bill does have 26 colleagues, courageous co-sponsors, and the support of nearly 50 human rights and civil society organizations, along with faith-based groups representing Jews, Muslims, and Christians. We are using the bill to organize and to activate civil society, to inform and pressure lawmakers at a time when systematic racial injustice and disparities are priority issues. Another issue of great concern is the threat of further Israeli annexation of Palestinian lands. A centerpiece of Israeli politics for some time, annexation continues to be a direct threat to Palestinians and to their right to self-determination. Because of the Trump administration's role in enabling this threat, in August of 2020, I introduced a bill called Israeli Annexation Non-Recognition Act. The bill prohibits any U.S. government, agency, or department from extending assistance or legitimacy to any area of the occupied West Bank annexed by Israel. While groundbreaking, my actions are actually quite limited. I am simply working to ensure that the U.S. obligations under both U.S. and international law are respected and upheld. These two bills are intended to send a clear message, a message to my colleagues, to the American people, and to the people in Palestine. In Congress, where Palestinian rights are ignored, I want the world to know that there are American political leaders who respect the rights and the dignity of the Palestinian people. Palestinian dreams for freedom, justice, and equality and self-determination are legitimate. Every Palestinian mother and father want a life free from military occupation and systematic discrimination for their children. And every Palestinian child's life is precious. It's my hope that parliamentarians from across the globe will find common purpose and work together in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Parliamentarians have the power to shift the discourse and to promote rights that respect everyone, fostering constructive dialogue, and to work towards a more peaceful future for Palestinians and Israelis. I would welcome an opportunity to collaborate and work with my parliamentarian colleagues in such a matter. Mr. Ambassador, I am extremely grateful to the United Nations having this committee and for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my work. And to my brothers and sisters with us today during this time of COVID, please be safe, and I wish you good health. Thank you.
Representative McCollum, I've listened to you and I've been really very impressed, moved, but also encouraged. But as we all know, the US is a key player, not only key, but the greatest player in our effort in finding a lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian people. And we are really grateful for the fact that you have chosen to promote the rights of the Palestinians by taking concrete actions, by introducing legislations, by being active, by really being seized by all the issues faced by the Palestinian people. And we really count on you to continue that involvement And you said something also very important, which is very encouraging, and which is true. You said that in politics, change is possible. And we are now envisaging a new transition with a new administration. And I hope that the situation will be much better. And we really count on your positive and continued engagement so that we can achieve what really is not achieved yet and which have been waiting for a long time. I think, as you said, we have to face reality. We have to espouse reality. And I think we, with your commitment, your continued commitment, and also having all our partners in it, we'll be able to make sure that global consensus is honored by the international community. And as also the Bureau, the committee will intend to remain in touch with you and see how we can also develop more relationship between the committee and you and your colleagues. And we would count on you also to help build that network. Thank you once again for your very inspiring, encouraging, and positive statement. Thank you very much, Representative McCollum.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
If you allow me 1 minute, sorry for taking the floor again. I have another meeting, you know, we're having the G77 ministerial meeting, and I have a statement soon. I need to leave. I want to thank all of you.
Thank you.
I will convey messages of condolences to the Palestinian leadership and to the family of Sa'id Arikat. And as the chairman said, I hope that we will meet again, discuss again, and join efforts to advance the cause of justice for the Palestinian people forward. My Deputy Ambassador Fida Abdelhadi Nasser is with you, and so the State of Palestine is represented. And you have, excuse me, I have to attend to another meeting. I have another statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know at this point if the panelists have something to add or to say. If not, I will move to the question section of the forum. I see none. So I will give the floor first to member states to put their questions. And also I will include some questions received ahead of the forum. And as the first intervention and as a special guest, we are honored to have here with us today Mrs. Alia Buran, who is the President Emeritus of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean and President of the PAM, First Standing Committee on Political and Security-Related Cooperation. So, Mr. Buran, it's my pleasure to give you the floor. Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yes, yeah. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Niang. And thank you so much for inviting the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean to be part of this amazing discussion on Palestine. And I would like also to thank the UN Palestinian Rights Committee for the organization of this event, which is extremely important. And thank you so much for the very distinguished panel that have spoken before me. And I would like to salute each and every one of you for the amazing work that you are doing in this committee. Allow me at the outset to convey the condolences of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, PAM, to the Palestinian people for the passing away of His Excellency Sa'id Arikat. This is definitely a big loss and a tragic loss to all of us. Allow me also to reflect on the fact that the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, I happen to chair the First Standing Committee on Political and Security. PAM is a unique assembly of 34 parliaments that represents the European countries as well as the southern part of the Mediterranean. And PAM has always had two vice presidents. Mr. Bilal Qasim is one of them. I'm happy to see Mr. Bilal. And the Israeli colleague, Mr. Wahbi, who is another vice president of PAM. This unique balance of representation, if I may, gives the Parliamentary Assembly a great credibility in terms of our work and in terms of our collaboration and in terms of the messaging and the narrative that we are so much consistent through the work and throughout the years of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. As you know, also PAM is a reflection of the Euromed Partnership Agreement, meaning that Parliamentary Assembly, it rests on three pillars: the political security, economic and finance, as well as the cultural and the social aspects. Each and every pillar of PAM, whenever we start any type of meeting, be it in the northern part of PAM or the southern part of the Mediterranean, we start by the importance of the two-state solution. We start by the importance of that the Palestinians should have a lasting peace in terms of self-determination, and the importance of two states living side by side based on the different UN resolutions. Each and every meeting we have, be it on economic issues, be it on cultural matters, be it on political matters, we always say this collaboration has to start from somewhere. This collaboration has to start on foundations that has the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, based on the Arab Peace Initiative and the two-state solution. Or else, how can we speak about economic cooperation between the North and the South, while the Palestinians do not have self-determination in terms of their economy, in terms of their own cultural matters, in terms of their own political issues, and so on and so forth. We have been all over. PAM has been extremely active when it comes to advocating the two-state solution. Wherever we go, whatever type of meetings we enter, this is the backbone of our assembly. And it allowed us to maintain the kind of constructive and continued dialogue that PAM is extremely well prepared for. But it's not only the two sides of the Mediterranean, as I said, but it's a collective voice between the north of the Mediterranean as well as the south that advocates the two-state solution, as well as the importance of the peace and security for both the Israelis as well as the Palestinians. I have been listening with great admiration to the panels, and I can say that this committee definitely reflects the spirit of PAM. And this committee reflects the importance of the legitimacy of the importance of the language and the different US resolutions when it comes to the two-state solution and the importance of the Palestinians to have their own statehood. We advocate regional cooperation. We advocate security for all countries. We talk very freely when it comes to hate speech, when we speak about the engagement between different cultures and civilizations. We put everything on the table and we discuss each and every item in a very collaborative manner. Whatever we do, we start by saying that the Palestinians do have the rights, both Israelis and Palestinians have the rights to live side by side in an environment that would boost cooperation, and it would boost the legitimacy for the Palestinian people for, as I said, self-determination. I would like to take this opportunity to propose a joint effort between PAM and the United Nations Palestinian Rights Committee, as we have done in the past in Malta in 2010, and at the appropriate time to convene a meeting that will bring together parliamentary representatives from the Euro-Mediterranean region and the wider Arab world. Such an initiative at the parliamentary level would signal a strong show of unity aimed at peace and would support efforts for meaningful negotiations at the government level. We are a body that we excel in parliamentary diplomacy. We have been in areas, and we have been advocating, and the credibility that PAM has is really a platform that I wish that we can take advantage in the good sense, of course, so that we can collaborate together with your good selves, so that we can advocate for the two-state solution, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the rights for the Palestinians and the Israelis to live side by side in peace and in harmony. Thank you so much again, Ambassador. Thank you so much again for your invitation. And I thank the efforts, and please keep well and stay well. And I can see that you have that kind of dedication that I really would like to commend and applaud. Thank you so much.
I mute the microphone.
I thank you very much, Mrs. Buran, Madam President, for your statement, and which is really constructive, enlightening. Thank you also for the insight, and also for giving us an idea of what your organization is doing, what PAM is doing. And I've listened to you very carefully, and I think we can build something together. And I take up personally your offer to have PAM and the committee establish a partnership in a more durable way. So I will submit the proposal to the Bureau, and I'm sure they will all agree that we need to build something. And through the division, we'll be in touch with you to see how we will organize that partnership. And I'm sure it will be beneficial, not only to PAM, but also to the committee and to the cause we are serving. So once again, thank you so very much, Madam President. It's an honor to have you among us here.
Thank you.
And now we're going to move to the questions from the member states who have expressed the wish to ask questions. And then we will turn after that to the panelists for the answers, I think. But before going there, even we'll have to listen to questions raised by people who are not from the member states. So I would like, when you ask questions, to focus your interventions on questions to the panelists, hopefully to elicit recommendations for our collective action. But before opening the floor for the questions, I would like to say it's my honor to give the floor to the new permanent representative of Cuba, Ambassador Pedro Luis Pedroso Cuesta, who has recently started his tenure in New York. Please allow me to also welcome you to the Committee Bureau, and we are looking forward to have you in our midst very soon, particularly when we hold our in-person meetings. Excellency, it's my pleasure to give you the floor.
Hello, marhaba bilhan.
Hello, can you listen to me? Good morning.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all members of the committee and also to the participants. Your Excellency, Ambassador Sheikh Niang, Chair of the committee and the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. It is really an honor to address for the first time the committee on the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people in my capacity of new ambassador and permanent representative of Cuba to the UN. First and foremost, I would like to express our heartfelt condolences to Minister and Ambassador Mansour and Ambassador Feda, as well as to the families and the entire Palestinian people for the passing of CEIRPP, Chief Palestinian Negotiator and Secretary General of PLO. This loss is certainly a hard time for the Palestinian people and their government. We are sure that he will be remembered for the energy and the unwavering commitment throughout his life in favor of the just struggle of his people. Honoring him is only possible by renewing the spirit and commitment to keep fighting for the long-desired achievement of a free and independent Palestine in the pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. We thank the Division for Palestinian Rights for having organized this event on behalf of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian people, which adds up to other events that have been held virtually as a result of the impact of the pandemic. Likewise, We acknowledge the three participants, the three panelists from the EU, South Africa, and the US, whose presentations have contributed to highlight the relevance of this event and will surely contribute to the objective of increasing international awareness on the necessity of a just solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, including the enjoyment of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, which is the only way to achieve a dignified and lasting peace in the Middle East. We believe that parliaments of the world play an important role in that endeavor. Parliamentarians frequently hold regional and web meetings, and exchanges take place at the bilateral level. All those instances can be platforms to mobilize the public opinion of our respective countries in favor of the achievement of a just and lasting solution to the conflict. In this regard, I would like to share with you the declaration issued on 15 July this year by the Commission of International Relations of the National Assembly of People's Power of the Republic of Cuba, our parliament, that strongly condemned the plans of the State of Israel, supported by the government of the United States of America, to shamelessly annex part of the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank in serious and flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The Cuban Parliamentary Committee stated that it categorically rejects this inadmissible expansionist and colonizing strategy by the State of Israel against the Palestinian people, which infringes the relevant United Nations resolutions and undermines numerous international efforts over many years to put an end to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. After expressing its deep concern about the pernicious effects of implementation of those plans by Israel on regional and international peace and security, it urged national, regional, and international parliaments, as well as the international community in general, to denounce the Israeli aggressive policies and colonizing practices against the Palestinian people, and to demand that the State of Israel put an end to the occupation of Palestine territories and respect the United Nations resolutions on the situation in the Middle East, including the question of Palestine. Said declaration concluded by reiterating the strong and unrestricted support of the Cuban Parliament to comprehensive, just and lasting solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict based on the creation of two states, which allows the Palestinian people the right to self-determination and to establish an independent and sovereign state on the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
My dear colleague, thank you very much for your statement. And I'm very pleased to see you face to face, virtually. And I hope I will see you again very soon in our in-person meetings. So I'm wishing you good luck in your mission. Cuba is a very strong member of our committee, and the support of your country to the Palestinian question and to the efforts we are leading together has always been unwavering. So we count on you as a new member of the committee. Thank you so very much. Now, I think because of time constraints, we'll just limit the questions and comments parts to two persons. One of them is the DPR, the Deputy Representative of Egypt. And then I will pick a question from the public. So my dear colleague from Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. I just want to confirm that you can hear me and see me. Perfect. Thank you so much, Excellency, and thank you for convening this meeting, and thank you to the honorable parliamentarians for their support to Palestine, a matter that is dear to us all. Mr. Chairman, the Speaker of the Egyptian House of Representatives stated very clearly the position of the Egyptian parliamentarians, especially during his participation in the Arab Interparliamentary Unions meetings, which are based on the implementation, just, comprehensive, and permanent settlement of the Palestinian question according to international law and UN resolutions, especially 2334 of 2016, and through the establishment of a Palestinian state on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. This is Egypt's hard and fast position, and it's one that we share with many countries. We take this opportunity to also indicate that we are looking forward to the indefinite cancellation of any Israeli annexation or settlement plans. They undermine the prospects of a two-state solution, and we have joined the majority of the international community in refusing this annexation. It represents a clear violation of international law and UN resolutions and endangers peace and stability in the entire region. A final question, one other point, apologies, is that we also indicate that we need to render much needed support to the UNRWA so as to enable it to fulfill its mandate towards the Palestinian refugees, and we call upon the international community to extend support to the UNRWA, because parliamentarians do have an intrinsic role in ensuring their governments support UNRWA as needed. A quick question, final question to the panelists. It would be interesting to know what kind of cooperation or initiatives exist between them and with the Arab Interparliamentary Union or the African Parliament, because these synergies of cooperation between different parliaments are often a very healthy basis to upon which to build future cooperation. So if they can perhaps shed some light on what, or if any of these initiatives exist, it would be useful for us to know. Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman, and thank you once again to all the panelists. It's been very informative and very enlightening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, my dear colleague, and thank you also for the role of Egypt in participating in our events and always playing a very active and positive role, being very constructive. So we are very grateful for that, sir. Now I'm going to read a question, and that will be the last question. So we'll have to limit to one question from Egypt, and then this question, which has been asked by Mr. Butanya Lamharzi.
My dear, I would like to have a small question, please.
Hello? You want to say something?
Yes.
Okay,
if you
please.
give me 2 minutes to speak also.
Go ahead.
Qasim from Palestine, please. Thank you.
Yes, please, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Now?
Yes, you can go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much for your invitation. I am Bilal Qasim, member of Palestinian National Council from the Political Committee, and also here I am as Vice President of the BAM, Parliamentary Assembly of Mediterranean. I know for the times I will not have too much time to speak, but I would like to thank all of you and to thank you for your invitation also, and to asking for this meeting and how could we coordinate as a parliamentary and as the Committee of the Palestinian Right and the UN. I have to thank also all of you about what we hear about our murder, CEIRPP, our friends, our brothers. I would like to thank you all again. And also I would like to ask you how we could support the Mr. Abbas, our President Mahmoud Abbas, a proposal to call for international peace conference to look for the peace in the Middle East and the peace in the Palestinian. Our ambassador, my best friend Riyad Mansour, speak a lot, and he is more than us could explain how the situation. And I know your committee, how much you work. I have been in many meetings in Morocco and Baku and in many countries. And I would like to thank you all. Your meeting and your work give us the hope that our struggle is right, and we will get our right as soon as possible with your support. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Qasim, for your kind words and for your encouragements. So we'll try to do our best to fulfill our mandate. And I'm glad that we are having also very good cooperation from Palestine and from the institution you are representing. So we'll still be counting on you to accomplish that mission. So now I have one question, and that will be a question which has been asked by Mrs. Butanya Lamharzi from the Interparliamentary Union in Geneva. I am going to read what she has sent. She said, I'm writing on behalf of the Committee on the Human Rights of Parliamentarians of the Interparliamentary Union about the cases of former Palestinian Legislative Council, Mr. Marwan Barghouti and Mr. Ahmed Sadat. The committee has been following the cases of several former Palestinian members for the last 20 years. The committee has submitted 2 new decisions in their cases, which I am pleased to attach. The IPU Governing Council endorsed these decisions on the 3rd of November 2020 during its extraordinary session. The Governing Council of the IPU expressed its concern about the detention conditions in the Israeli prisons, especially for Mr. Barghouti, given that he was allegedly denied his visiting rights for 3 years since 2017. And Mrs. Lamharzi also is asking, I would like to know if the panelists are going to raise the issue of these 2 former Palestinian parliamentarians and others who are detained in Israeli prisons. It will be interesting to hear the views of the 3 parliamentarians on parliamentary solidarity and that they can do and what they can do to promote the human rights of all parliamentarians. Finally, she's saying that she would be grateful if she could be in touch with the 3 panelists. So Mrs. Arena, Mr. Mandela, and Mrs. McCollum. I think the division can help in facilitating that connection if it is the will of the panelists. So now at this point, I think what we're going to do, we're going to give the floor to each panelist. I would ask you, first of all, to respond to the questions and comments which have been made. And after that, you can make your concluding remarks. So I'll start with Mrs. Arena, if you have comments or answers to the question raised, and then you can finish with your concluding remarks. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Different question. The first one is, what is the work that we could do with different parliament assembly, for example, the African one, African Union, but also the ACP, Joint Parliamentary Assembly, and the Joint Parliamentary Assembly for the Mediterranean. I think it is a very good good proposal. I think as Miss Alia Burhan said that in the PAM, the question of the Palestinian is always an issue that they tackle in their parliamentary assembly. And so I think that when we work between Europe and the PAM, this is a consensus on what we have to do on Palestinian issue. It is more difficult when we work on the African Union and the ACP. And perhaps we have to do something on this to find alliance on different sub-Saharan countries. Because as I said, for example, Sudan, decided to have a normalized relationship with Israel without asking the question of Palestinian people. So it could be interesting to have this initiative at the African Union or the ACP Inter-Parliamentary Assembly to try to have a common and a consensus on how to respect the UN and the international law together. It doesn't mean that they don't have to have contact with Israel, not at all. We have agreement with Israel, but it means that it is necessary to put on the agenda and on the discussion the situation of Palestinian people and the human rights. So it could be interesting to have this relationship and this common view of that. When it comes to, for example, the UNRWA, we work together to find solution and to try not to put UNRWA in a difficult position. We met UNRWA 2 days ago, and they say that they are in a very critical situation, not to be able to pay people on the November salary. So we need to be together and to finance these organizations, because when we go to these UNRWA initiative in different infrastructure that they have, it's really a positive way of thinking for all these displaced people and give them future. So it's really important to support the UNRWA work. And when it comes to Mr. Barghouti and other detainees, we worked a lot with the civil society, giving and asking Israeli to give the right to civil society to go and to have access to these people, to work with them. And so we use all the channels that we have to make pressure on this. Of course, it is really something difficult, but we put it on the agenda, always on the agenda, and giving the floor to the civil society to be with these people being in jail without having access to a fair trial. So it is really something that we are doing at the European Parliament with urgent resolution, with aid for the civil society, and so it's really something that we push for at the European Parliament. Thank you. You are muted.
Okay, I just said that, have you also given your concluding remarks with your intervention? You are done.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you for your commitment and for all you have been doing. Really proud of you, and we count on you to continue the very good work you are doing. So now I can give the floor to Mr. Mandela, to Honorable Mandela. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Sheikh Niang. For us, I think, first and foremost, the issue of political prisoner is very close to our hearts, particularly coming from President Mandela's lineage. My grandfather, when he started the talks about talks with the apartheid regime, there were primarily 3 conditions that were put in order for effective negotiations to be held. And these were the immediate release of all political prisoners, the unbanning of all political parties, and the right of return of all South Africans living in exile. Therefore, we continue as South Africans to call for the apartheid Israeli regime to meet these 3 principles and ensure that for any talks or for any negotiations to be held, they need to ensure an equal representation of Palestinians, and therefore have to ensure that Palestinians that are political prisoners should all be released, and they should also unban all political parties in Palestine so that they could effectively participate in negotiations. But also, most importantly, Palestinians in diaspora ought to be allowed the right of return back to their homeland and their motherland. And this would therefore pave effective engagement on any talks or any negotiations. But I must say, in terms of us South Africans and parliamentarians, we have reached out to civil society, NGOs, business and unions right across the landscape of South Africa. We've spoken to churches, synagogues, mosques, and all interfaith groups to ensure that we can be able to mobilize effective support for the Palestinian struggle. But also, it is not only just internally within South Africa. We are also engaging at the regional forums, that being the SADC, and also other regions in the African continent, like East Africa, Central Africa, Western Africa, and the Maghreb region, to ensure that there is consensus in the support that we are giving to the Palestinian cause. But most importantly, as also having been a member of the Pan-African Parliament, we were also able to bring this matter to the Parliament, the Pan-African Parliament, to ensure that the Palestinians' voice is heard there. But we are very pleased that as South Africa, through His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, being the chair for the AU, he has put the agenda of Palestine right into the center and has been prioritized. And we continue to be a voice for change in Palestine. And I think this will enable us to now go into the ACP and be able to engage with Arab countries on these matters. I therefore want to appeal in my closing remarks, Your Excellency, that Palestinians themselves need to ensure that every Palestinian in diaspora is an effective ambassador for their cause. While we were out during the apartheid brutal regime in South Africa, every South African in exile became a voice and an ambassador for our own struggle for liberation. And I therefore want to employ all Palestinians to ensure that they become a voice and also ensure they are effective ambassadors for their own struggle for liberation and continue seeking support in the global solidarity movement. I think having been able to witness the anti-apartheid campaign that rallied behind for South Africa, we can ensure that we can look into those countries that supported us as South Africa to continue to be the force of change and to continue to be the people that will be able to rally behind Palestine today and bring about the change that we all seek, to see Palestine free from the river to the sea. I thank you.
Thank you so very much, Parliamentarian Mandela, for your, once again, very inspiring statement, and for the commitments you have already made. I'm sure that you will continue mobilizing within South Africa and in Africa. And as we say, also see how we can have a bridge between Africa and the Middle East so that this cause can be addressed in a very efficient way. Now I give the floor to Honorable McCollum, and for if she wants to respond to the question been posed, she can also make her final comments. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. To our colleague from Egypt who is asking how we engage with different international organizations, I was very involved in the first parliamentarian group who looked at World Bank projects, PNOB, and had served as president for that for a short while. So I work on food security, healthcare, education, all the things that need to be addressed in the Middle East for a secure, peaceful Middle East, but as well as things that, the reason why I think my country should be funding UNRWA to make all those things happen for Palestinian families, education, food, security, hope, opportunity, and of course access to healthcare, especially during the time of COVID. So I work on that. We work a little differently in the United States. We do have some committee work, but I can work on things individually. Here at home, as I mentioned in my speech, it has been absolutely fabulous working with 50 humanitarian organizations here that stand up for Palestinian self-determination rights and justice, as well as the interfaith groups, including Jews, Christians, and Muslims here at home. But I've also had the opportunity of working with people in Israel on this issue as well as some of the Israeli parliamentarians who are representing the Arab viewpoints, and received, I'm in consultation with them quite often. The question about political prisoners, I think my two colleagues addressed that very succinctly, so I won't go back to that again, except to see, I'll see what, sometimes my colleagues were writing letters and doing things, and I'll see if there's something that some of my colleagues in the U.S. Congress might want to work on that as well with me. Let me just close with this. This has been a very enlightening, wonderful discussion. I thank the committee, Mr. Ambassador, for all the work that you are doing on this. This has been a foundation. I also want to give a huge shout out to UNICEF and other UN organizations that are working in collaboration with you to raise awareness on this issue, and that I think we all share the same goal, and that is we are all working towards a peaceful future, a justful peace for the Palestinians, and a peaceful future for Israeli, for the Middle East, and for our world at large. So thank you all very much. This has been a wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to continuing my work not only in the Congress, but with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCollum. We share the same territory here in the US. I think we can get you very easily. So we intend to do so, and we are looking forward to having that collaboration. So on behalf of the committee, I'm very grateful to our great panelists, Parliamentarians Arena, Mandela, and McCollum, for taking the time to participate in this meeting, sharing important information and also the insights with us, and answering questions which have been raised by the audience. I call on all members and observers of the committee, on the member states at large, and on parliamentarians across the world to continue our joint defense of international law and human rights, to support the Palestinian people in their just quest to exercise their rights as part of a just and enduring solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the committee is also, as I said, looking forward to continuing interacting with you, honorable parliamentarians, and hopefully be engaged in joint initiatives if needed. Before I conclude, I would like to thank all the members and observers of the committee, the wider UN membership, our partners in the civil society, and the public at large for participating in today's UN forum. I would also like to thank the Division for Palestinian Rights of the United Nations Secretariat and to its director, Mr. Elio Tamburi, for organizing this event for our committee. I would like to remind everyone that a recording of this meeting will be shortly uploaded on the webpage of the committee, www.un.org/unispal, where you will be able to learn more about the question of Palestine, the work of the committee, and upcoming events, and also on your YouTube page. I hereby now declare closed the virtual event entitled International Parliamentarians in the Question of Palestine. Thank you once again so very much. God bless you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
you and take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care also.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye, Feda.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Arena.
Bye.
I listen for your committee in the IBU.
Yeah.
Yes, I have been there, and I make small speech if you remember.
Yeah, of course, yeah, of course. And I hope to
Nice
see
to meet
you
you
again.
again.
I
Yes,
hope
I spoke. And thank you for your working with for Marwan Barghouti and for the other. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you soon. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you.